Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. As July blazes on with record heat waves scorching many parts of the globe currently angled towards the sun, the temperature has also been turned up to an uncomfortable degree on Intel, whose attempts to douse the flames of scandal surrounding 13th and 14th gen CPU stability have gone up in smoke. Not the good kind either. Bad timing too, since AMD just invited everyone to a pool party celebration for the Ryzen 9000 launch, and NVIDIA can't hear any of this because they're basically drowning in the absurd amounts of money they're making selling their own stock. So go do a towel change into your board shorts, bikinis, or budgie smugglers, because on this week's Tech News, it's time to get wet.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Lexar's NM790 NVMe SSDs, providing lightning-fast storage for the latest generation of gaming and workstation PCs. Featuring a high-bandwidth PCIe Gen 4x4 interface, broad compatibility thanks to the M.2 form factor, and capacities up to 4 terabytes with sequential read speeds up to 7,400 megabytes per second, the NM790 makes no compromises and is conveniently available with or without an integrated heatsink. It's also a perfect pairing for Lexar's stable, reliable, and efficient THOR DDR5 memory kits too, so click the sponsor link in the description for more. So, those stability problems Intel 13th and 14th gen CPUs have been having, particularly the top-end 13900K and 14900K, KS, and KF versions, might be more of a problem than many first anticipated, per an investigation by Wendell of Level 1 Techs on Wednesday. Persistent crashes with Raptor Lake CPUs, particularly while gaming, were first blamed on aggressive motherboard settings that ran the CPU out of spec. A few rounds of BIOS updates and arguments with Intel about what the default spec is actually supposed to be in the first place was supposed to fix it. Yet reports of inexplicable failures persist, and so Wendell found 2 game developers who were willing to give him access to their crash databases with thousands of end-user reports, so he could dig into some actual data to see what might be found. One common crash type related to OODLE decompression failures in Unreal games showed that 1,431 out of the 1,584 crashes were Intel 13th and 14th gen CPUs? Interesting. But perhaps more interesting was when Wendell looked at game server systems themselves, using 13900Ks and 14900Ks paired with server-grade W680 chipsets. These motherboards from Asus and Supermicro are designed for stability and reliability, and are not even capable of overclocking in the way that Z-series motherboards are. And yet, these systems, about 250 of them across 3 companies Wendell talked to, have a failure rate of 50%, regardless of whether it's an Asus or Supermicro board, which means it's almost certainly the CPU at fault, and it's also not caused by overclocking. Some of the servers were underclocked and even ran their memory as low as DDR5 4200 for safety and still failed. Wendell's contacts even say the failure rates seem to be getting worse, pointing to a possible degradation over time issue. The problem is also reflected in current pricing for at least one data center's servers, where there's a $1,000 plus markup for a 14900K system versus a 7950X because support incidents have been unusually high for that configuration per the data center provider. Gamers Nexus Steve, who is at all times attuned to the living fabric of spirit and thought that binds all of the tech world together, sensed the great disturbance brought forth by Wendell's discoveries, and so he ventured forth that they might commune together in the NASA headquarters from Interstellar. Further discussion focused on those affected, such as the game developer who said they estimate losing $100,000 in lost players due to server instability that was blamed on the game's software. There's also a growing call for Intel to make a public statement about this mess and to make some promises to end users who have faulty CPUs via replacement at the bare minimum. There are even gamers out there who might have been banned from their favorite game for cheating due to their system's erratic behavior through no fault of their own. Developers at Warframe and Alderaan Games posted their own data on crashes related to Intel Raptor Lake CPUs, with Warframe's damning chart summarized here. Almost all were coming from systems with 13th and 14th generation Intel processors, and no doubt other developers will pick up on this, and more data will continue to come out in coming weeks. Now, Intel would likely prefer we all just focus on their upcoming Arrow Lake S desktop launch, but oof, the latest rumor there says it might be delayed until December. And both Wendell and Steve hinted quite obviously that they have more undisclosed information on the subject that they're planning to drop at a later date. So, Intel, seriously, two of the most knowledgeable, dedicated, and well-respected members of the tech media have you in their sights. You know game devs and others who have been burned by this issue are going to be piling on as well. You will have a short window of time to get ahead of this before it blows up. Do not delay in making some kind of statement with clear and actionable commitments. Because guess what doesn't seem to be delayed? AMD's Ryzen 9000 series launch with fresh new Zen 5 architecture and leaks aplenty this week, which makes sense as AMD has promised a July debut. But when in July? I don't know, ask me again tomorrow. For now, it's looking like the prices are probably going to be about the same as the 7000 series. PC Canada, a store in Canada that sells PCs, listed the 9700X for about $380 and the 9600X for $295. TechRadar claims there will be plenty of stock as well, and units have started to arrive at stores, as long as this picture, shared by Redditor Electrical Employer 22 on the PCMR subreddit, isn't AI generated or something. And benchmark scores are starting to trickle into databases like Geekbench, because some reviewers forget to turn off their Wi-Fi, but this has the 6-core 9600X hitting 3,284 single-core and 14,594 multi, and the 8-core 9700X at 3,370 and 16,329, respectively. The 9600X peaked at 5.47 GHz, and the 9700X got to 5.54 GHz. Not bad at all. Another set of scores compiled by Video Cards has the single core values just a bit lower, possible due to PBO settings or just variance between boards tested and AGESA microcode versions. The single core scores are certainly the highlight in this grouping, but as with all early benchmark leaks, don't take these results too seriously and hold out for independent reviews, which typically go live a day or two before the CPU's launch. Okay, we talked about Intel and AMD. What's NVIDIA up to? Swimming in pools of money like Scrooge McDuck, it would seem. And why not? Why not sell off some stock, Jensen? Those leather jackets have gotten pricey, and you should be able to afford a few more, as near daily NVIDIA stock sales in June have netted you upwards of $169 million. I'm sure the rest of us also earned almost that much in June, if we all pool our money and bet it all on 31 Black and let it ride a few times. Jensen has now sold more than $1.1 billion worth of NVIDIA stock since 2020, showing truly inspirational leadership to his executive staff, who decided that they should follow suit, which they did, having sold more than $700 million in shares in the first half of 2024. Which of course begs the question, should we all sell the thousands of shares of NVIDIA stock that we have too? I wish I could tell you the answer, but I am sworn not to give financial advice per the terms of my release. But if you do run into anyone from the NVIDIA executive team, tell them congratulations, and then see if they'll lend you $100,000. Speaking of cash money, it's time for Tech Briefs. As gung-ho as AMD's CPU team has been about their new CPUs, we haven't heard much from the GPU side of things in quite some time, but maybe the distant rumblings of an RX 8000 series launch are starting to move within earshot, as Twitter leaker Kepler_L2 now claims AMD will launch the RDNA 4-based Navi 48 GPU die at CES in January 2025. Details are murky, but Navi 48 could power mid-range cards similar to the current 7800 XT or 7900 GRE, and there's also a Navi 44 GPU that will be more of an entry-level offering that Kepler says will land in Q2. Let's hope for a smooth flight. AMD is also working on glass substrate CPUs per Business Korea, which would mean more chiplets in a smaller footprint, higher interconnect density, faster I/O, higher power efficiency, and larger package sizes. Sounds like a win-win-win-win-win, which is why Intel and Samsung are headed this direction for future chips as well. AMD's timeline is aggressive, with products planned between 2025 and 2026, while Samsung and Intel have both stated that they'll have glass substrate processors available in 2026. Bit of a late-breaking story on Friday. Following the Zotac exposes customer RMA information story they broke last week, Gamers Nexus has now revealed another company, MSI, doing the same thing, if not worse. More than 600,000 customer RMA records going back to 2017, including some from streamer Asmongold, were publicly accessible via an MSI intranet website that you could just search for using DuckDuckGo and then browse all the records at your leisure. or conveniently download them in a spreadsheet. An egregious oversight and breach of trust by MSI to be sure, but thankfully they have fixed the problem and it's no longer accessible. But if you've ever RMA'd something with MSI, consider yourself pwned and keep a weather eye out for scams. Let's finish with some eye bleach, courtesy of this super cute keyboard with a super cute company name, Linglong. But it's not just a portable folding keyboard, it's an entire stinking computer with decent specs too. A Ryzen 7 8840 APU with up to 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of M.2 storage. It's got a battery, a speaker, and a small touchpad too. You'll need to BYO monitor, of course, but it has USB-C connectivity and weighs only 1.7 pounds. Not too expensive either at 3,000 yuan or about $412 US. Perhaps a bit of a niche product, but I thought it was cool enough to share to end today's video. So there you have it guys, tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested in reading more, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you next week.